Would you want to talk about partying? What did you want to discuss, man?
With me and like my experiences with it, of course, like there's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Where like the beginning kind of like where it morphs into it being like a part of your everyday life, and that's kind of how it like came down for me, because there was always that pass of like being in high school and going to like parties and stuff, and like I'd always try to have that perfect like balance, but then within like my family there's that aspect of kind of leniency towards it, and I think at that point it can become dangerous, and as it gets to like more dangerous like situations and environments, it kind of morphs, and that's where you get like the middle and how you feel like in the indifference of it, and with that indifference it kind of leads you to where you want to continue down that road and continue going with it, or it leads to like the end, which is like kind of how I feel with it at this point, like I feel like I need to triumph over it with because of course like what partying kind of does is like it determines like what you kind of like or what you like around you when you're not like focused on work or anything like that. So and like who's around you, like who's involved and stuff. So yeah, I'm at that point where I like to say I'm at a point where I want to do what I want to do, and I don't think getting like fucked up or like getting having all this stuff in my system and fucking hating my life the next 3 days afterwards, you know what I mean?
Let's take a step back. So yeah, with what you said, I didn't think about it that way. It's funny. You go to a party, it's a singular event, and you think, when you leave, it's done. You just helped me realize that it takes on a life of its own. Ooh, for myself, I'd have to maybe assume that, so first of all, it's definitely the music that stays after you leave. That'll determine your friends, and then especially the stuff that you use that's illegal.
Yeah, right.
I won't just stop right there. I didn't realize there's a few things that will continue on in your life, and they'll be there.
Yeah. It's
not just a one-night thing. Nice.
It's and a lot of other things come in between like that. There's like like the reasons you go there, like you said, the music and stuff, and the friends and the camaraderie, and there's like with that, like those like the memories start to build, and like you the attachment kind of builds from that point, and that's where the difficulty lies, I think, at this point in my journey, where you tend to like find out where the where kind of the relationships start and end, like were they only based on the aspect of you partying and like being there like roadie and like doing the shit that they want you to do, or doing because you can handle as much as they can, or that sort of aspect. And
here's another random add-on. Sorry, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
No, it's cool.
About that joke, huh? Basically, dude, if you're the one that's the most down, the most willing, there's like this celebrity status. You get elevated for the deeper that you were to dive into that world. I always thought that's kind of funny too, man.
It absolutely is. That's that is very detrimental, and I think on the if somebody's going through with that, like in that situation where they're kind of the life of the party because they can do so much, it's very dangerous. It brings a lot of kind of eyes on you, and I don't want to say like celebrity, but it just kind of brings that like camaraderie where he's down, fucking let's do it because he's down to do it first, and it's fun because he's having fun doing it, and look at how much there's a lot of that, and a person kind of wants that especially with those like drugs and that partying lifestyle involved, drinking to excessive amount, there's always that Kickstarter, that the one spark that starts the flame.
Yeah, because early on, when everyone's maybe still sober,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even shy,
Yeah.
it takes that. You have to see someone else dive in first, and then you feel better. Especially if you start seeing 5, 10, 20 people, then it becomes easier and easier. Being that first one,
it's yeah.
let me establish one thing. How old are you, and how long has this party thing been going on?
Okay.
Just to give him an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 29 years old, and I'd say, as far as like partying with heavy drugs and it's like, I'd say excessive like drinking to blacking out. It started at around like 18 or 19. It stopped for a little bit as I tried to focus for school, but after that, I'd say it picked up at around 25 again, and it got to an extreme level where there'd be one night, 2 nights out of the week where I'd be getting like blacked out drunk, trying to find drugs to keep myself in the balance of being able to still do shit yet live a party lifestyle. And so it and then I'd say that lasted up until about just within the past like couple months, honestly, to the point where like me wanting to do that, it's just it's non-existent. I feel and deep down inside, so I'd probably say 13, 14 years of just like balance of whether it's good for me or not. And it really kind of it goes in situations where you have good times, and then you wake up, you're like fuck, like for instance, you like me, I'd go to I'd be with a couple work buddies, and you'd go to I like certain type of music, or under that frame of mind, that drug, and you're with your friends, and you're doing fucking you're doing fucking hits in the bathroom and shit, and you're ordering drinks left and right, fucking you're like thinking like, fuck, do I have that much money on my card? Like, probably not, but I'll deal about that in the morning. And you find yourself like blacked out, and sometimes you just the memory like falls off, and then you wake up and you find yourself either at home or in a situation where that you don't want to be in, like at somebody's house, like sleeping on the ground, or just situations that aren't flattering, to say the least. And yeah, like those situations, you go through enough of them, and you start to realize that they seem optimistic, I guess, in the sense of like, it's a party, everybody's there to have fun, fucking who gives a fuck what happens at the end of the charade, like, or the end of the fucking deal. You're there with your buddies, but to what extent, like, and how long are they gonna be there? That all comes into play once you like start to think about it in hindsight.
So there's a price to pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That part I've never seen in the commercials when they're criticizing things like that,
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, there's no light at the end of the tunnel with that, and it's very scary. At least when you get to that point. Like, of course, everybody's gonna like, I like to think about this topic in general, being that a lot, in society, it's very normal to to drink or to socialize and to have it be a part of your life. A lot of people, I'd say America would, if they were all to take a vote whether they can handle alcohol or not, whether they're lying or not, I'd say a majority of them would say yes. And I don't know if we can like really live under that. I don't want to call it a ruse, but like, is that really the truth? Like what person can control themselves as opposed to control their like alcohol consumption, you know? And that's something that, you know, I've like had to struggle with. And, you know, there's situations where it's led me to, you know, being on the fucking shit end of the stick, for lack of a better term, in situations in life. Like, yeah, like it just really, and it's funny because a lot of these situations, like now that I'm thinking of them and like now that they're coming to mind, you see in the end of it, it's always a majority of the time. Maybe it's because of my attitude most of the time, but you deal with these problems alone. And you know what I mean? Like you fucking, if you're like in a rut, if you're stuck somewhere, if, you know, you're in jail, or if you're, you know, on your ass, sleeping on the streets, most of the time you're by yourself. And I think those are the moments that kind of make a person like myself to test that feeling, or that wanting to go through that same machine over and over again. To jump on another like part of that is where the beginning of that process also begins again, is like the falling right back into that rut, where it can easily be done. It's, you know, I've done it in the past where I have a night of drinking, and I think, you know, because of the shitty situation that I ended up in, like one for instance, I go out and hang out with a girlfriend at the time, and I'm like having a good time with their family and stuff, you know. Drinks are being passed out like it's fucking you know, like I can't put a term on it, but you know, and you just kind of, or me at the time, I'm just like slowly realizing, fuck, I'm actually putting away a lot of alcohol. Like, here goes 2 Coronas, here goes like a couple shots, and it seems like all fine, you know, all fun and games, and I know everybody has like different tolerances, but I find myself, I guess while I was blacked out, I had journeyed far away from the party. And you know, I was, well, first off, the party was in some city near, I'd say like maybe 5 miles out of LA, and I blacked into where I was in the middle of like Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. And you know, I don't know, like, dude, I don't think I look like a guy who kind of particularly, you know, hangs out in downtown Los Angeles, you know, like, you know, I don't want to put it like that, but it's a scary situation. And this is all like realizing it as, you know, as you're blacking in, and as like you know, the party's over, the fun's over, like there's, you know, now it's all danger. And I'm thinking like, you know, God, that nothing happened to me in that scenario where I was blacked out, because how easily could a car had come across. And I hate to play like worst scenario, but that's what it kind of takes, I think, in the repercussion, or in the recovery, is seeing that worst case scenario in every scenario that you put ahead of yourself, because you know, like anything can happen. And, you know, especially if you like put things in your body that inhibit, like you're you know, completely inhibit yourself, you know, like if you're in a controlled environment, that's fine. But yeah, with that was a very scary situation, because I was you know, I was running into people that I, you know, wouldn't particularly be talking to, you know, normally, and I was taking bus routes to try to find myself, to try to get back to, you know, the house that I had just left. My cell phone was dead. I was asking, you know, like I was literally trying to get around, you know, by asking people for directions and fucking walking my ass. Like, you know, I'm sure people do that day to day, you know, but it's definitely a thing where I found myself doing that because I put myself in a situation where I didn't, like, danger wasn't like a thought, you know. And like that in itself you go through a situation like that, and then a couple weeks passes by, and a couple influences come around, and a couple situations, couple people come across, and you're like, oh, here we go again, you know, and you don't get brought back into it until like that feeling, or almost that like the closeness of getting to there, and you like it takes those trials and errors to you know, to almost get to that certain point. And yeah, that was kind of, I jumped on a couple different like tangents from there. But
what do you say to those critics that are like, oh, you know, I only party either once a month, or basically it's all manageable? Oh, yes, I've gotten crazy on certain nights, but it's not a big deal. I survive. I still have my job. What do you say to those people?
It's definitely a thing where it could be a catch-22, I believe. I'm not a firm believer in something being, for lack of a better term, kind of halfway or done, you know, like half-assedly, you know, for because especially if you're trying to deal it like with the situation or with the topic. What am I trying to say here? With the drug or with the thing you're using, and you're still like kind of consuming it or having it be a part of your lifestyle, even if it's on like a monthly term. I think that's still looking for the reward and not caring for the consequences afterwards. I you know, I'm somebody who might be speaking of, you know, speaking out of hypocrisy, because you know, like, of course, like a situation might come along where, you know, 2 or 3 months from now, and somebody offers me a beer, you know, and so nicely as to have like one, you know, just have one, bro, like, you know, relax, you know. I'm not trying to come across as, you know, you run into people like that all the time. That's just how their generosity stems from. It's just lightly, you know, offering stuff like that, and a lot of those people don't know where you come from and like how you sort of see those things. Yeah, I think just the aspect of doing it like once a month, I think it could be dangerous if you've taken it, if a person, or let's say, if you feel like it's dangerous to you and you limit it to yourself once a month, then what's to stop that once a month to becoming once a week? And just as much as it went from once a week to once a month, mm-hmm. I think it can easily go back from once a month to once a week. And because alcoholism doesn't, the alcohol, in my belief, I think it stays in the body for longer than a person might think it does, you know. The effects of it afterwards, especially after drinking a lot of it, I've, you know, kind of thought about it myself, where I feel like I need to ingest more naturally just to get over the feeling. And maybe some people can live past that, you know what I mean? Maybe some people are like, I'm cold turkey afterwards, you know, I have a hard night out and I'm like hating life, but I'm not touching it. It's a rare breed, but I don't think it exists amongst most of us, you know. So to answer your question on, you know, in whole, I would say that it's a dangerous path to walk, that fine line of I'm gonna do it, you know, responsibly once a month. If you have the perfect environment, I'm not gonna condone it still, but I don't see, like, I just wouldn't agree with it. Like, I'm not gonna say anything that kind of gives way to it. I would just say that I wouldn't condone it.
Yeah, let's get that out the way real quick. We're not judging anyone that does it.
Right.
You're just telling your story, man, and you're not gonna go on to say, hey, you guys, stop doing whatever you're doing, right? Just want to get that out the way, because it might sometimes, I don't know, these things come off the wrong way, but I think it's important to clarify that we're not telling anyone what to do.
Absolutely. You're 100% right, and we're not. And I don't think this is more therapeutic than anything else, you know, for somebody who wants guidance and this message, because me myself, I come from a background where my family finds it, like I said earlier, completely acceptable if you have all your ducks in a row. If you've earned a certain platform in which you have a roof over your shoulders, you're paying, like you're doing things right for what people expect of you. You're actually pulling through, and then you feel like you can redeem yourself through a way of the alcohol and stuff, and like that sort of it just brings along more problems than I think people may realize.
That might be a little more general. Like, say someone says, yes, I've paid my dues. I've earned everything I have. Nothing's really wrong. So please allow me the freedom to live the way I choose. Yeah. Because I've put in the work to earn the freedom to do what I want to do. That might be off subject. It doesn't matter. So let's get deeper into the party thing now. I mean, there's two things that I want to ask or cover, which is the social aspect and how that had an effect on the parties. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. And then the second one, which I'm not sure what we'll get out of it, but obviously, simply put, like, hey, were you in a bad place mentally? Was your life in a bad place mentally? And were you trying to fill the void or fill the holes with partying? I wanted to relate more so specific reasons as to the party, why you chose the party as much as you did.
Okay, cool.
I mean, those are two, but maybe there are other, I'm not sure, but...
I'll touch on both of them. It's social and the influences as to why I felt like I needed to do that, right?
More so basically, were you using it as a Band-Aid to cover up for pain?
Yeah.
Which you don't even need to hit that in detail, I promise, but was there something lacking spiritually, mentally, or just life in general that you were using that? Which is, I guess I'm placing that as an assumption, but I've heard others say that.
Yeah.
Using partying as an escape
yes.
to forget about problems or life's problems, so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
In addition to all the other reasons that it's just fun. But you know what I mean.
Right.
We could start with the social aspect.
That there's because I think that's as far as like chemistry with like friends is concerned, I think that's how it starts, because it starts with finding things like in common, like, oh, we're going boys night out, or like there's a whole bunch of these like phrases that go along with getting together and like having these sort of like almost like the perfect term is fraternizing, and you have these things in mind in which you go out with your buddies and you're like, okay, we're gonna do this, and it's this is gonna happen too, or even like just merely getting together and having that camaraderie and then that going out with it, or experience like having that party atmosphere with it. I just like with especially with alcohol and drugs involved, the mindset gets lost. Oftentimes I've gone into like a party thinking that I'm gonna talk to this person, I'm gonna talk to this person, and like I'm gonna have a good time, and I'd say 4 times out of 5 none of that shit ever happens.
That's funny. I did that in my youth too.
Yeah.
I had the vision of what I beforehand,
yeah,
of this dreamy situation that it was all going to play out like that, thus me going
right
in hopes of that happening.
It's like fool's gold. Like I think like how society kind of portrays it in the commercials, where you see like everybody's fucking cracking a beer, having a good ass time, no problems, no worries, like that's a rare situation with that stuff, with alcohol around, at least with anyone that I've experienced. And I'm sure there's people out there who, that's not the case, but I don't, that there's obviously a problem with that, there's something that, there's something there. And then as far as like what sort of has stemmed it, what was the root as to like what like why I was partying, or like why I would take it to the extent that I would, I'd say there's a couple reasons. Mentally, for sure, it was just due to a lot of like loss in my life, like close relationships. Like it's very interesting that my aunt sort of my godmother. She lived a very kind of party lifestyle, but she was the golden child in my family, where she was a paralegal, but at the same time she also liked to have fun on the weekends, and she'd smoke, she would have alcohol, and nothing else too extreme to that part. My point being is that she kind of let me realize that you can have that, and so it's a real like interesting balance of like whether it's acceptable for me or whether it's not. And kind of lost my point there, but the topic of where I was going with that was oh yeah, right. So she lived that lifestyle, and she did it for a very like long time from when I was living around her. And she was in a relationship. She began a relationship from I think she was with this guy since like 2004, 2003 or something. And alcohol was a big part of their life. They would go out and they would have their nights out at the bar up the street, and so it was sort of innocent when you saw it, and you don't think about all these things haven't happened to me, and like all these party situations hadn't happened to me at this point. So I'm just like, it's all fair. Like they're she's taking care of business. They have their arguments here or there, but then you slowly start to see the signs of like there being abuse within the relationship there, and it's you slowly begin to realize what's really going on behind the curtains. And eventually it started with my having lunch with, this is my godmother, and me and my grandma having lunch with her showing up with the black guy, and you try to ask her what the reason behind it, and it's like all the excuses in the world except what the reality is. And a couple weeks or a couple months go by, or I lose track at this time, but I get a phone call, and my grandma's telling me to dramatically sit down if I'm standing up, and it goes to a situation where I find out she's brain dead because of an argument or just some sort of tuffle that she had with the dude that she was dating at the time. And she was on life support, and due to the situation which her body was in, we had to take her off of it, and she passed away. And that that situation, it happened so fast yet so like so deliberate that like you don't really realize like what happens and how to process it. So like you take it day by day, and from that point, like I just didn't know what was like right or wrong. I didn't know whether I wanted to like make that image of like how I saw her go away, or if I wanted to like stop that whole feeling of like of getting that fucked up, because that's what led to her being in the situation that she was put in. So of course with that there's a lot of trial and error.
All right.
Cool. So I would get that phone call, and it changes everything, like how I feel about like myself, it completely like makes me feel like I don't have that person to go to anymore. There's no more safe haven. There's no more person in my life that does it with responsibility. And not only that, but there's that just resentment against this guy, that'll never go away. And it goes into anger, and it goes into frustration, and it goes into even vengeance. Like what, a bunch of things come into mind, and it all stems from like what you think is a good time. And I think a lot of that happening, like this happened before I was 25. This was after like my first stage of it being a problem. I think like this was actually at a this was at a bad stage for me, I guess, in my time, because I was trying to go about life in a good perspective. I was going to school full time. I had a little part-time job. I was very situated, and I had a girlfriend, and after that situation, little by little, all that started to break away, and like it seemed like it wasn't my fault. But then when I look back and realize that alcohol was involved, that it actually was a lot of my fault. And little situations would happen because I wasn't paying attention, or the person, like the person I was with didn't understand what I particularly wasn't going through, or I wasn't particularly understanding what she was going through. And because I was so scrambled, I thought, and I was always looking for like the next kind of thing that excited me, I guess. After that, party, like meeting up at the bar, on a random Tuesday afternoon, just driving home drunk after like being at a friend's house, just stupid, really things that really got in the way of life more than anything else, now that I think about it. So I think that situation really kind of like sent my partying and attitude into overdrive, really. That sort of, because everybody has a past, growing up. You go through like trials and errors, and it makes you the person who you are. And I think there are limits to like what a person like could kind of like handle, and it's just all about how a person's able to handle themselves in those situations. I think, and like how you're able to like progress forward, and that's, I guess, kind of where I'm at with it now.
Something crazy. So one reason that I would cross new territories or new limits, whether it was television or family members that were also engaging in like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And you look up to them because they're older than you, I looked up to them. So basically, people in my life, whether it was on television or in either friends, family, whoever it was around that I kind of looked up to, if there was an element of drugs or alcohol involved, I had this crazy thing within me that I felt like it brought me closer to either them or to understanding them or embodying the parts of them that I thought were cool. It was a mindset thing, and you just touched on it just now. It was something about, you said trial and error. Mm-hmm. So I think another attractive aspect is this journey. I mean, it's kind of lame that you would place hardships on yourself, like create them, but still overcoming hardships or a hard night or surviving one night or a situation. It's not that it feels good, but it feels like at the time there is a reward in that in itself. To be more specific, I had a cousin that was doing a lot of bad stuff too. And when I started engaging in similar behavior, basically using specific drugs, there was something stupid with. There was a voice in my head saying like, "Oh, I wonder if I could be the one to survive the hardship that I've seen someone else like fall and crumble to, or like fail, or you kind of know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or facing a demon that someone else has, and there's this weird part of me like, well, I'll persist because I could maybe. There's something about it. I don't know if it's attractive, man, but you ask yourself like, can I get through it? Can I cross the line where others have failed? It's really stupid, but I don't know. Just the stuff you were saying, it kind of reminded me. I mean, this is a while back when I didn't have my head on straight.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that wanted to test my limits and test my will and just to see where I stood, you know, whether or not, I don't know what I was going to do with that information.
Right?
I don't know, but at the time there was something cool about it.
Yeah.
Or attractive, or something that made me like keep going in that direction without second guessing.
Right.
So
there is that, absolutely. I think that's I definitely think that once like you're in it, there is that sort of quest for how far you can push it, and I mean, whether it's by yourself or whether it's like egged on by other people, you know, that whole peer pressure kind of deal. You know, if there's a certain amount on the table, are you going to do the full thing, or are you going to fucking do half and like jump out, or fucking, you know, face the consequences of everybody, you know? That's oftentimes, you know, I'd find my situations of that playing in my head, like, you know, there's that right there. When are you going to say no? Everybody here is going to fucking call you, you know, this or that, or like,
something politically incorrect.
Right?
Something that wouldn't fly in 2019. They'll call you.
Yeah, dude, on a PG scale, dude. Absolutely, man. It's true. You know, like that's and I find myself more fearful of that than the fucking repercussions of doing too much fucking drugs, or like doing like these guys are gonna call me a fucking like pussy, or like these guys they're not gonna have respect for me, and they're not gonna invite me to more things, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna be part of the fun. I'm gonna be you know, I'm that fucking the guy that doesn't want to do as much as us, so fucking I'm on the cusp of being cool or not, you know? That speaks into like that weirdness, you know, not weirdness, but that aspect in your head where you know it's not right. Like you think about it in that mind frame where it's like almost where you get gratification out of that. It's essentially like at that moment, you know, you do enough, you do, like, you're able to keep up. You're a part of the group. Like you're one of them, you know.
It's funny because say at a younger age, or everyone involved in that moment doesn't have the self-awareness of what their limits are.
Yeah.
So they're not even worried about it. I mean, like, if someone were to tell me to do something now, I'd be like, you know, I know where I stand. And you can say no. You're like, no, I know my limit. But
yeah,
there was a time when no one, and it just looked cooler.
Yeah.
It just looked cooler to do more. And, like, no one took into consideration individual tolerance levels of each person.
That's spot on, man. Like, it goes into some people do it so much, or have it a part of their like routine, or want it to be a part of the routine, so they look cool so much that they sell it, or that they, you know, they have it in such a like high frequency of their life where they're known to their friends as the guy who has it, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I just gotta call my guy, you know? And that, like, there's a routine of like falling into the trap of that, like, you know, you want to be, you're the cool guy, like, you have it, or like, I'm the cool, like, I got the drugs, so like, you know, fucking everybody hits me up.
Basically, they start depending on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that just leads into like a whole mess of a whole, you know, array of situations that can happen from there. You know, the dependency, you know, just all that shit. It's yeah, it's really, and I think that part is detrimental because it just leads to like there's no individualism with that, you know.
I want to take this time to talk some shit, dude. I want to talk some shit, man. I don't even know if I'll put this up, but concerning alcohol, even nowadays, after, I mean, I'm 32, people like my peers, they already know what's better, what's not, what the limits are. Dude, I can't stand it when someone pushes another individual to drink past their comfort zone, or they just put these beers that, come on, one more, and it's like, dude, just because you can take 6 to 8 shots and I can't stand it.
Yeah.
And what's maybe I'll take some heat. What's even more insulting, or this is hard to watch, is when someone says, you can't waste that beer. Like, that whole bit where, like, oh, it's beer, like, what's it's so it's like it's gold or something. And I'm like,
yeah,
are you kidding right now? It offends me to see individuals push someone past either what's healthy or what they want to do. Oh man, it's so bad to watch. It's hard to watch. I actually get a little angry.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been with anything, but just with alcohol, it's like, oh, here's one more. Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when the person is resisting and they keep pushing on them. Oh, here's why it pisses me off. Oh my God. It's like, dude, why don't you shut the fuck up right now? Because it's not my fault that you need to depend on fucking drinks to have fun.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that you need to have 6 to 10 drinks just to elevate this fucking moment or this fucking mood because you're such a whatever the hell you are. Like why do you have to be so dependent on something else, whether it's alcohol or to have fun? Like, dude, you don't need all that. Or in my opinion, it's easy for me to say because I don't drink.
Right.
But I think it's kind of a character flaw on an individual's fault when they feel that you must consume this amount or you must do X amount of drugs for a moment to be fun. I mean, it's easy to say now we're adults. Like, I think we can have fun with or without, but
yes,
it's hard to see someone that's so dependent on,
pushing that. Yeah, I completely understand that, and I totally agree with you. Honestly, I think that's where a lot of people will like those people who kind of, I don't want to say fall victim to it, but who it eventually happens to, like they don't see themselves the way that the other person egging them on does. They actually have some like shame or like some guilt or. Where the people who are egging them on like that, I feel it's like the opposite. They care less for that. It's all about the moment in, right now. They're not obviously like having fun or being entertained. So what entertains them is kind of, the way I look at it is it's just sort of like lazy and creative, like lazy in their creative, like, you're not like, it's quiet time, it's just like nobody's really talking or like nobody's really, mainly there's an entertainment of like TV going on or there's a lot of other things that can be done as opposed to needing drinking to be able to get that going, like to get that sort of camaraderie going on, and like we're at this age now where I'm finally starting to see the light, and it's a lot of people they need, it's a necessity for them. Like they go out, they literally grab like 24 packs before they meet up, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying like there's not even a chance for you to like drink less than that, like if you're bringing a fucking 24 pack to the party, there's not even the establishment of like getting together, talking about like each just talking about what's going on in each other's lives. It's just immediately I hate, like I don't mean everybody talks like that, but there's that attitude of like, I'm gonna go to a party with with a 24 pack or and I'm gonna have the time of my life, and there's no reasons to why they have the time of their life. You know what I mean? It's just like, once I get there, I'm gonna start drinking, and everything good's just gonna start happening.
it's gonna just jump 0 to 100.
Yeah.
No possibility for not so much sober conversation, but whatever a sober time could produce, whether conversation or whatever fun that could produce, it's not even a possibility.
Absolutely.
It just has to go 0 to 1.
Absolutely, man. And a lot of people just don't think about it like that. And like the times recently that I like to like drank responsibly, I've only had like one beer. You know, I've only had, like, I'd say at the max within the past couple of times that I've drank, you know, with this mindset, I've had 2 beers at the max, you know, and I was still surrounded by people who were like, I just couldn't help but notice, you know, they were surrounded by packs, and I'm like, I'm perfectly fine drinking how much I'm drinking, even though I'm kind of being egged on to drink more, you know, I'm completely comfortable with it, and I don't mind, like, I'm telling them, you know, no, I'm okay. I have my own. Like, I'm trying to, you know, in my head, you know, blasting on the inside of my forehead. It's like, I'm trying to drink responsibly, asshole. You know what I mean? Like, but it's I don't know how it comes off to them. But deep down, I felt like that feeling that you mentioned earlier, like maybe they think that I'm better than them just because of, you know, and it's. And it's not, you know, that's not the case at all. It's just about like what one's willing to, like, you know, willing to put in, how much a person's willing to put into like their body at a time, and like I don't, you know, it became it just became a repellent as I started to realize that. And like even like now, last time I drank was probably like 3-4 weeks ago. And I say drank, you know, it's like, you know, one drink, 1 can of beer, you know, and it's still in my mind of whether it's okay or not, you know, and I like, and I'm beginning to realize that it's not, because once you get over that one-time experience, you realize like what it's all about, how you feel afterwards, and you know, like in the moment, like I said earlier, like you don't realize that, you know, it's all like good times, and then all the hindsight starts to come out when you're done, and it's even that at the process in which I've, you know, attempted to do it, like I've just merely come up with this thought process recently, how I need to go about, you know, go about my lifestyle, and even if I'm trying to meet, you know, mutual ground with a friend, you know, it doesn't have to be with that. And if they don't understand that, then that's kind of where I don't want to like not make friends, but that's where the journey ends for me.
Good. That's part of my difficulty. I won't lie. You know, if I don't drink, it's whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boring moments. So I'll say that on my part, I lack social skills to a certain extent, where I'll maybe alcohol would even help me get a conversation going, or help the fun level go from,
yeah,
you know. And the truth is, that's something that I feel like I can figure that out while sober. Like the social aspect, I can fix that.
Yeah,
it might take a lot of work, but whatever. So
that's right.
I wanted to say, I mean, if other people have like a social inability or a lack of the communication skills, that they think they need to drink first, loosen up and all that, I get it. I've been caught in boring moments myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I can say another random criticism concerning moments where I don't drink and I'm around people that do, sometimes when I get lucky, when they start, the moment a person starts acting out of character, I already feel like I won. I was like, that's right. When they're screaming,
yeah,
yelling, and they're saying things they don't mean, or even if, I'm not wishing bad upon people, but if someone walks out with a DUI, or if someone gets in a fight, the moment, again, they break out of character, I finally, that's I hate to say it, but that's the victory on my part, that I didn't give in, or just because everyone else was doing it, I'm like, good, see, I maintain who I wanted to be. And I'll admit it. It's fun, man. It's fun to observe people acting out of character. In fact, like, dude, sometimes I think it's more enjoyable to watch others than to be the one putting on the show. Or
Yes.
and I don't mean to be mean that it's a show and all that, but I would much rather be the one clear-headed, just observing, as opposed to being someone acting out of character. And whether or not they regret it, I don't know. But whatever. All I can say is, simply put, it makes me feel better when I kept a clear head through and through concerning alcohol.
Yeah. I don't think that a lot of people feel that same. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the problem with it. And like you said earlier, it's a lot of people need that sort of that Kickstarter to feel relevant in their in their conversations, or to feel like that allows them to become looser with who they are or what they find acceptable. And I really think it's it's just lack of effort, for one, within that realm of sobriety, like trying. It's too quick. It's almost like just have one drink and everything gets I've said that already, but everything gets started, and that's not necessary. And like you said earlier with the DUIs and shit, that's a whole thing where people, depending on the household, like some people can stack them up and like have multitudes of DUIs on their record, and it's really a thing where they continue to live that lifestyle. Like I don't mean to go right at the issue like this, but and then there's also ones who if they get one, it's life altering, living within those confines of being being nearly caught just because you drank too much one night and you didn't sit out for how long you needed to, or you didn't do the proper things to do so. Now your life is in ruins because you weren't ready for a DUI. But who the fuck is? People don't go out drunk driving on purpose. Ultimately the result of them doing that is, but a lot of people, they don't go out at night looking for a DUI, and that in itself, the financial, the time, the effort, the way it takes away from, the work, your work, all that stuff. The only reason I speak of it is because my dad has 3 DUIs on his record, and that's how he spills it to me, as far as what you have to go through to get out of that. And that's and on top of that, you just hear a multitude of stories and of what the worst can happen is. And I've gone through that case where I didn't find it as the most important thing in the world, and it's a slow process when you start to slowly realize, and even when people put it on your table or on your chest, this is what happens when you do this too much. I think people need to open their eyes to more oftentimes, because it just goes out the window when somebody's like, hey, you want to go grab a drink? They're fucking all over it. And all it takes is just a person being too thirsty, a person having a bad day, and I don't want to be cartoonish about it, but that's scene for scene, most of the time that's how it goes. And that's scary. And I hear all the time people have 2, 3. My friend Robert, who I was talking about earlier, just got his second one, and he's got a new car, and I'm kind of I hate to judge on him or lay the hammer on him, but I'm like, dude, how are you gonna pay for that shit now? You know what I mean? I live on my bottom dollar, and I'm bare if I got a DUI right now, I'd be so fucked. And he's like, I know, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm lucky that I have the environment that I do, the people that I have around me. He's like, because if that weren't the case, then I'd be fucked too. And I was like, well, maybe you need to like realize that, maybe you need to kind of separate yourself from that attachment. You can't allow that to be a part of, because a person could always have like in the back of their mind, I'm okay, like how often does I kind of compare it to like a person bungee jumping, or skydiving. So a person goes skydiving with the assurance of having a parachute in their back and their parachute having a parachute, right? Mm-hmm. Now anybody who's ever wanted to go skydiving wants to do it whether they have a parachute or not. They just want to experience that free fall. And some people have the parachute. Some people have 2 parachutes.
Okay. I get you.
And some people don't have anything at all, but still want to feel that, sensation. And people were out there fucking, jumping from the airplane anyways. And it sucks because it's that sensation of, oh, you'll be fine, fucking it's you're jumping out of an airplane, like, how thrilling can it be? Like, it's so thrilling. Like, you have to see it from that perspective. Like, you're dumb if you don't. And it's until the person, crashes or doesn't have the parachute, they're like, fucking, oh, fuck, And next thing you know, they're on their ass. And, the other person has got help and has got, whether that's financial, whether that's, family oriented, whether that's, just environment oriented, all those come into play when I'm speaking about that being a person's parachute, like in comparison. So I think that could be dangerous, and a lot of people like egg that on without realizing that in a person, like, because not everybody's sitting there like, this is what I come from financially, like, here's my salary, please abide by these rules, I wouldn't like to step out of these boundaries, and thank you very much, that's not how life works. It's more like generalized.
Maybe wow. I'm not putting this, dude, we should make an app like drinking responsibly, where you give your person's background lifestyle, what their tolerance is, and then your friends just look it up on
yeah, and they can abide by it. And then fucking you can totally like give this person thumbs down, like, this guy tried to egg me on like way too much, like I can't hang out with him, he's bad news, fucking give him like negative stars and shit.
Let's be okay. We could put this to a close. The bottom line, I'm thinking, which I'll give you a chance to say also, is just, it's not just one party. It's not just one drink. Basically, there's so much more behind it. Yeah. And I want to repeat again, we're not telling anyone what to do. We're not even judging you if you're doing these things that we kind of criticize, but
right.
That's all I have to say. That there's just more to it.
And me,
if you want to say something.
Me in a person, I know you abstain from it, but me in a person, I can be, even after a while, I've been proven, like I said a couple weeks ago, I had that situation where somebody handed me a beer, and I was gladly to accept it because it seemed like a friendly gesture, and I limited myself. I completely, but I still met that the fight back, like the person didn't completely like understand why, and so there's gonna be those tests, or like those whether you how you're willing to control it, and I just think in the end, if you meet like a standard in which like you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept, I think that's kind of where like a person could be successful in conquering it. That's like the best.
Which there's only one way, is to go into the fire, right? So there will be those phases where many mistakes are made. It's not something someone else can teach you.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not judging anyone that is going through that learning process.
Absolutely. It's always going to be up to the person.
Cool. What's your closing thought on this?
Don't do drugs. No. Essentially, I would say to a person who's sort of in that conflict of mind where they don't, they have this environment where they want you to continue to party, but yet in your head you feel like, and what I mean by party is, you go to work, you feel like you've accomplished yourself at a point where, you know, your work week's over, and now you have no other kind of venture or way to go but to, you know, go out and risk a lot of things that aren't in perspective any given night. A Friday night where a lot of people who are at a young age of people who are partying are going out at the same time too. So you know what that means? Everybody in a vicinity is in a higher rate of, you know, danger, especially when alcohol is involved. I hate to be like a statistical kind of like asshole, but that's kind of the way it goes. There's never a situation where it's safe, and if it is, it's hardly safe. And I just think that if you know, if you're somebody who's easily kind of easily tilted one way or the other, depending on, you know, your time, your day and how it was, or your emotions, it's really not the temptation you want to have around your life. And I'd say if there's people who are against that lifestyle or against that mindset, I think it's easy. I think it'd be best to say to not to have them, not to avoid them in your life, but definitely make them know that you're looking to change yours, your atmosphere, your perspective on alcoholism, and on like what, you know, how you're willing to live your life after those hours. And if they're not willing to accept that, then with attempt, you know, you give them maybe a couple tries, and if they're not seeing it your way, just as you've seen it theirs for, you know, however long, then it goes to show where the relationship belongs. That's just my opinion. If a person's willing to be by your side no matter what, then they'll be by your side no matter what decisions you choose to make. And if you're still stuck in trying to have a drink, you know, every once in a while, I don't advise it, but good luck.
All right.